Welcome to part 4 of our interview with Professor Richard Wolff, and he's going to tell us that Trump, yes, is a catalyst for change. I don't know if you feel comfortable talking on this, but if you do, can you tell me what do you think the ramifications of having the world's the wealthiest predatory capitalist, Jeff Bezos, owning the paper of note, the Washington Post?
It's an amazing thing to allow that in this society. That's what I mean. It's Trump time here in America. You're rich, buy the newspaper, buy the politician. Look, the American people, every poll of the American people indicates that they would like there to be less inequality in our economic system. And the Congress is about to pass a tax reform. And to use the word reform here is an amazing hustle, but let's leave it. They're about to do something that's going to make us more unequal. How do you explain that the elected representatives do the opposite of what the mass of people show they want? The answer is the people at the top have the money. Look, if you were one of the 1%, you'd understand. In a society, particularly like the United States, which used to pride itself on having a big middle class, if you are screwing the mass of the middle class, which we all know is being done, and you're the people at the top with all the money, you know that sooner or later the mass of people are going to figure out we're getting screwed economically, but as long as we have the vote, we can use the vote, because we're the majority, to correct, to undo the inequality of the economic system. The rich people figured that out. So the way to stop that is to buy the political system, which they've done. And to help that process, it's good to buy the newspaper and Time magazine and the TV too. We have to face, that's the lay of the land, use the internet, use person-to-person communication, use comedy, use it all to try to open up the space. I would argue also, and this is true for me in the work that I do, I have my own radio and television show, which is called Economic Update, and maybe you can put a link on there somewhere for us.
Definitely will. Big fan of the Economic Update. It's amazing, all the news that really affects us that's not being reported, and you find it and you report it. It's an amazing show. We will definitely put a link.
But use all these things. I can tell you this. I was born many years ago in a city called Youngstown in Ohio, a city devastated by capitalism, which has basically abandoned that part of Ohio and much of that so-called Rust Belt area around there. I have seen, therefore, very clearly what capitalism is capable of. And I have tried to explain, basically, that America can and should do better than capitalism. I've had a hard time doing that for most of my life. In the last 5 years, everything has changed. I have given more public speeches in the last 5 years than in the previous 40. I have been asked to write articles for magazines that would never before have published what I have to say. My radio program through the Free Speech TV network now reaches over 45 million Americans. I mean, the opening is enormous. In a peculiar way, Mr. Trump is the best organizer I could have.
Wow. Well, it sounds like you've been listening to this show for saying something like that, because we predicted that Trump would rip the ugly mask off of the horrible, or he would rip the pretty mask off the horrible stuff our government has been doing for this, since 1980, roughly, right? So we had when you have a guy like Barack Obama, who's, he makes everybody feel good when he talks, but he's doing this nefarious shit at the behest of Wall Street, the military-industrial complex, and Big Pharma, and the health and care, and the, by the way, fossil fuels and Silicon Valley. So when you then take that pretty face off of it from Barack Obama and you put Trump's face on, they're doing a lot of the same things, except now people are actually upset about them. So that's a good thing. If Hillary Clinton was president, you would have another election where half the people stayed home. You would have a solidification, by the way, in Congress, in the House and the Senate of the right wing. It would be even more powerful than it would. So right now, the left, or what we consider to be the left, the Democratic Party, which I don't consider them left, they're about to take over the Congress again. They are positioned, even in a bad election time, where they have more seats vulnerable than the Republicans. It still looks like they're going to have a real chance to take over the House and the Senate. And they have no platform, by the way. That's how bad the Republicans are. The Democrats have no plan to help people, yet they still might win. So that's what I keep telling people, is that when we get rid of Donald Trump, we have to replace him with something. And right now, we don't have anything to replace him with. We have just Donald Trump light. We have corporatism from the left. So what do you think is I'm trying to tell people to organize third parties. Do you think that the salvation is through the electoral process, or is it a mixture of social activism and the electoral process? What do you prescribe?
Well, in the time that I had left, it's the middle one you just said. I don't know what the best way is. I don't believe anybody does. For me, what we need to do is to use every available way. Contest the election, of course. Develop mass movements that can talk to people directly, of course. Have there be voices that are not hooked into the political system so that they're free to say what they really believe without having to worry each day whether 10 voters will not like them tomorrow because of what. Yeah, we need all of it so that the many different ways of being critical and the many different ways of offering alternatives begin to develop the mass of people without which I don't think change will come.
Okay. Well, listen, I really appreciate you taking time. Again, everybody, we're going to put links to your show, your Economic Update show. We told people about your book. I checked that you can get that everywhere. And, it's just a pleasure to have a sane voice talk about economics on the show and help educate everybody about. By the way, all I have is doom and gloom. You actually have a positive message of change. There's a way we can take back over our economies, our governments, and our lives, and that's through worker co-ops. And you know what? One more thing that I learned from you is that, in America, we're stuck with this two-party choice, which is really one party, the party of money, which is what all the problem is, right? But there's other countries that actually offer people alternatives. Like, for instance, in Portugal, can you tell people about Portugal? What are their options in Portugal?
Yes, most European countries, including Portugal, have multiple political parties, and they've had them for decades. And by the way, the argument that they use is familiar, or should be, to Americans. They say they want freedom of choice. They'd like to have a lot of choices. Americans want choice too. When they go to the supermarket, they want 27 different boxes of cereal to choose from, or 25 toothpastes. Toothpaste that's blue with red stripes, toothpaste that has little green sprinkles in it. We want choice. But somehow, when it comes to politics, two is just ducky fine enough. It's a very strange idea. So Portugal has many parties. And so most of the governments in Portugal tend to be coalitions. The different parties have to get together to make a majority to run the government. And here's a little factoid, which, if you didn't know it, is another piece of evidence about who controls the media. The government in Portugal today, which has been in power for a couple of years, is a coalition of the Portuguese Socialist Party, the Portuguese Green Party, and the Portuguese Communist Party. That's the government of Portugal. And it's doing very well and has very good relations with all the rest of Europe. Americans, would have a conniption trying to get their heads around this reality. And you see it all over. These countries haven't fallen apart because of that. These countries have solved a lot of problems because of that. But we in America, with our love of freedom of choice, We don't want any choice other than Republicans and Democrats. That's the limit of the choice we can tolerate in that small detail of an area called politics.
Professor Richard Wolff has been our guest. Check out his book, Democracy at Work, A Cure for Capitalism. Check out his show, Economic Update. It's amazing. I can't, it's just, you hear only one BS economic narrative your whole life through the mainstream media. And then I run into a guy like you who just totally obliterates it. It's just amazing. I love you, and I think more people need to hear about you, and that's what I'm trying to do. So thanks again for making time, and we'll put links to all your stuff, and please come back again. And if you're ever in Los Angeles, we'd love to have you on one of our live shows. I know our crowd would go crazy to see you.
I'd love to do it, and let's stay in touch, and I look forward to another conversation before too long.